Hi, I'm Ashley Shelton, and this is Shelton Ministries. I thank you for joining me here today. It's been a while since I last done a podcast. I've had many issues that have arose technical-wise since I last done my podcast, and I'm not sure if this one's going to work here today or not, but God told me to do podcasts, and as to whether they work or not, well, that's between him and YouTube. But what I'm going to do is remain faithful to what he called me to do. As to whether it works or not, I'm going to do it. And at first I was letting the discouragement get to me, and I thought, I'm just going to quit. I'm just not going to do this. And then I was reminded that God called me to do this. As to whether I have any people viewing my videos or not, and as to whether any of these are ever actually uploaded to YouTube, I don't know. Only God can decide that, but what he called me to do was to do podcasts, and that's what I'm going to do. So, and here today, what I would like to talk about is the seasons. God tells us that there are many seasons that we will go throughout our life, and I'm just going to read these because everything he tells us has its time, and it's in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse number 1. It says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away." A time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. So God tells us that these are the different seasons that he will have us to go through. And for everything, there is a season. And everything that God puts us through, there is a reason as to whether we understand it at the time or not, and it may not be until we get to heaven that we fully understand why God has put us into situations like he has. And I just was reading this here earlier today, and it just really stood out to me that God, he tells us that there are these seasons and a purpose that we're going to go through. And one of the ones that I have learned, or not learned, but actually have had to actually try to learn, is that there's a time to keep silent and a time to speak. And my natural instinct a lot of times is want to speak. Whenever things upset me, I sometimes just want to speak it out. But God tells us no, that there's a time to be silent, and learning to discern whenever he's telling us to be silent and whenever he's telling us that it is okay to speak about it is the goal in learning to obey God in everything that we do. And here, not too long ago, there was something that was on my mind, and I wanted to speak about it. And the Lord told me, no, don't speak about it. You remain silent. And that was very hard because I wanted to speak about it. And whenever God said, no, keep quiet, I was like, I don't understand, but okay, if you're telling me to keep quiet, then that's what I'll do. And I don't know why that God puts us in different situations like he does, but he's God and I'm not. And I just have to obey him and do what he says. And, I often think about the different situations that people went through back during Bible times. Whenever, I'm sure there was many times whenever they wanted to speak and God reminded them, no, you're not to speak right now. You are to remain quiet. And there's just, and God, he will give us that wisdom. He will give us the wisdom on when we are to speak and the knowledge on when we are to remain quiet. And sometimes you wonder, why do so many people fail to enjoy God's presence? And there's several different reasons there, and some they may really not know him. And if you really don't know God on a personal level, then it's hard to enjoy his presence. And I'm thankful that for the things that God has done in my life to help me to be able to get to know him more on a personal level. But God, he desires a close relationship with us. He wants us to talk to him about everything that we face, every feeling that we have. He wants us to have a relationship with him where we can talk to him about those things. And I remember back whenever I didn't do that. But now I often find myself talking to God about every little thing, and I will question myself, well, does God want to hear that? And then I'm reminded back in Ecclesiastes there in chapter 2, verse 24 through 26, that God, he is interested in wanting to know everything, all of our thoughts. He wants us to tell it all to him, because you know what? He's God, and he already knows it. So why wouldn't we talk to him about it? And sometimes just talking about stuff to somebody, it just helps. And who better not to talk to things about than to God? Because many times God is the only person who can actually change a situation. And there's been many situations that I have been in where I have only told God about it. And I'm like, God, I don't like the way this went, or I don't like this situation, and I need you to take care of it because I don't like it. And there's just a peace there that will come from it whenever you turn everything all over to God and you share everything with him. And God, he reminds us many times that there is no fear in love. And he reminds us of that there in John chapter 4, verse 18. And that's a lot of times, I think, why we may not share everything with God is because we are afraid. But God knows everything about us. And so we have to do what he calls us to do. And he tells us not to be afraid, that our lives are in his hands, and that he will lead, and he will protect, and he will provide for us, and he will not punish us. And it's just something there that he did remind us that no, he's not going to punish us for that. And we know that whenever we sin, that actually breaks our fellowship that we have with God. And in order to get that back, you have to sometimes really find the strength within to come past that sin in order to get that fellowship back there that you had with God. And you know what? Whenever we do get to that point and we feel like we have lost that relationship, what we have to do is repent of what we did and tell God that we're sorry for that sin and ask him to forgive us. And he will bring us back into the fellowship and into the blessing of his love. And I think that's a lot of times what happens is that we get this mindset that, well, I've lost my fellowship with God and I have sinned and God probably no longer wants a relationship with me. But that's the biggest lie from the enemy, because God desires a relationship from us, as to whether whatever it is that has happened that has broke that relationship there. And we can begin to enjoy God by developing an intimacy, a relationship with Him, because His priority for our life is determined and by that, because that is what God desires from us. And there is nothing wrong, or not nothing wrong, but there's absolutely nothing that we can do in our own power to save ourselves. Only God can save us. And no matter what that sin was that we committed, God, He's the only one who can save us from that and who can turn the situation completely around. And God, He is committing to loving us, and He's all the time wanting to teach us something. And these different seasons that God will take us through, it's because He's either trying to humble us or it's because He's trying to teach us something. And I think that many times it's both. I think that He is trying to humble us, and I think He is trying to teach us something. And being able to discern what that is that God is trying to do there, I think is one of the biggest things that we as a Christian and as a child of God can do, is to learn to discern what it is that God is trying to tell us, or is He trying to humble us? And God, He knows exactly what it takes to humble us, and He knows better than anybody what it's going to take to get us back to where He can use us for His highest potential. And a lot of times we will get this mindset, well, maybe we're too far gone and God can't save us. But we are never too far gone that God can't do a miracle, and He can save us. And all He wants is for us to call out to Him and ask Him to forgive us. And God, He will turn that situation around. And He is for us, and He's not against us. And I just thank God for what He has done in my life here in the past few months, because it's in that time that I have learned different things that I would have never learned unless I was put into the season that God put me into. And it's just, and I'm excited to see how God is going to take everything that He actually took away from me, and how He is going to take that and turn it completely around. And God said that He will restore. So when God takes something away, it's because He has something better planned for us. And that gives me hope, that knowing that God, He took my dream job away. It was a job that I have wanted ever since 2022. And God, He completely removed that job out of my life. And I'm excited, though. A part of me does feel like sad about it, but there's another part of me that is excited because I have faith that God has something better planned. And I think, how can it be any better? Because here I was working my dream job, but God knows. And I know that one day I will look back and I will say, God, You knew exactly what it was that I needed. And You did give me something better than what I had. And yeah, You did take that away. But now to look and see what God has given me. And I'm excited for that, because I'm not sure what direction we will go, but I know that there's a season for everything. And God tells us that there are seasons, and there are different seasons that we will go through, just like I read here earlier. And there was a verse here that I read here a few minutes ago, right before I got on this podcast, and if I can find it here. And it, well, I don't see it here right now, but God has been telling me that He has a new season that He's going to be taking me into, and that was actually confirmed on Sunday whenever I was in a church service, and the man that had brought the word, he came over and he laid his hand on me and he prayed, and then he walked away and he came back and he laid his hand on me again and he prayed, and he said, God, he said, give her a mind of understanding as you prepare her and bring her into this new season that you have planned for her. And I thought, here's a man that knows absolutely nothing about me. He knows nothing about my past or anything that I've been through for the past 2 years. But here, God used him to confirm to me what he had already been telling me. And only God can do that. And God can do that for anybody. You just have to believe and ask God and just believe that God is going to work in situations like that, and God will. And I asked him whenever God did tell me that he was going to be bringing me into a new season, and I was like, God, I hear that, but can you confirm that to me? And like I said, this past Sunday, that was confirmed. And anytime we're in question about something, we just have to reach out to God and ask him to confirm it. And he will confirm it to us. And sometimes he will do it immediately. Sometimes it'll take him several months, a year. But in his time, his perfect time, he will confirm to us exactly what it is he is telling us to do. And that's like whenever God instructed for us to go to the Pentecostal church. He come and talk to me, and he told me exactly what it was that we needed to do. And I asked God, I was like, God, I've heard your voice before. I know this is you speaking, but what you're telling me to do makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. So I need this to be confirmed. And I told God 3 things that I needed to be confirmed. And I told him the person that it needed to be sent by. And God done that within a couple of hours. From 8 a.m. until 11 a.m., God answered that prayer. And all 3 things that I asked him to confirm this to me was all right there. And when God confirms something to you, there's no way that we can argue that with God, because God, he works in the supernatural, and we just have to believe for it. And when we believe for it, God will do what we ask him to do. And I just thank him for what he done for us. And one of the biggest things that I have come to really appreciate since being in the Pentecostal church is the learning to speak in tongues. I can remember whenever we used to listen to that service there, we would listen to it sometimes on our way as we traveled, and whenever they would start speaking in tongues, I remember we would always turn it off, and we didn't listen to that, because that was a very foreign language to me, and something that I was always taught that no longer was a gift that God gave to us. But since being in the Pentecostal church, I see that was completely wrong, and I thank God that he has gave me that ability to pray into the Spirit, because that is whenever I don't know many times what to pray, but I know that when I'm praying in the Spirit, that God, he will take exactly what I am saying, and that he is going to transcribe that into what needs to be said, and that will be the prayer that will be answered. Because ultimately, more than anything, we want God's will for our life. And a lot of times I find myself praying more in tongues than what I do in my own language. And there was a time here a couple months ago when the Lord instructed me that I was to do nothing but to pray in tongues. And I didn't understand it, because I was like, God, I feel like that I need to be speaking to you and telling you exactly what it is that I am in need of. And he told me no. He said, you are to do nothing but to pray in tongues. And that's what I did. And that went on for at least 2 months. And now it's just like a part of my life, because I will start off praying in my own prayer language. And then soon I will find myself praying into the Spirit. And that is where the supernatural happens, is during that time. And I just am thankful that actually has become a part of my life, because that is what powers me a lot of times, is that, and gives me the strength to continue on. But that's about all I have for today, and hopefully this worked. And if it did not, then I will keep doing podcasts until the Lord shows otherwise on how to get this to actually upload and work on YouTube. But I thank you for joining me, and just remember, nothing is impossible with God. With God, all things are possible. And I thank you for joining me, and I will see you back here next time.